Friends, will you pray with me? And as you feel so comfortable, I invite you to join in the second time through. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God. Amen. You need an arm, Mr. Fox? You got it. All right. Can you smell it? I remember as a child, on our few trips that we took, even though we didn't live too far away, a few trips that we took to the ocean, and you'd get there and you open the windows. My little ones now do the same thing. Mom, open the windows, open the windows. Have to smell that salty sea air. Of course, smells of a fishing village are a little bit different. Perhaps maybe you're not taking in such deep breaths. But this is the setting where we find ourselves this morning. Jesus at the seashore. There are fishing boats, men casting their nets, pulling them back up, some successfully, some not so successfully. The sounds, the sights, the smells of this. In our minds, perhaps from this distance, it seems somewhat picturesque. Perhaps we picture, Maine, lobster boats, or maybe even something even more exotic, in Italy, fishing boats off the coast of the Mediterranean. Oh, halala. That was not this. These fishermen, Simon, who is to be called Peter, his brother Andrew, then James and John and their fathers, they are sort of the bottom of the social barrel, fishing barrel. They live in a time where their industry is highly regulated by Rome. It is highly taxed. They have to pull in a lot of fish in order to even make a living. And they are not well regarded by the folks around them. We might compare them these days to farm laborers, the ones who are doing the really hard jobs for very little money, jobs that are considered disposable to many, having a really, really hard time. And then here comes Jesus. And he says, here, I have this new kingdom that is at hand, the kingdom of heaven. And he uses a word that would make it very clear that he is comparing this new kingdom to Rome. It is the same word that they would be using to describe the Roman Empire. Jesus uses to say the kingdom of heaven. Perhaps this is why Jesus hightails it out of there when John is arrested. He knows he's about to say some things that Rome is not going to like, the religious authorities are not going to like, and they're already a little on edge because of John, so maybe he should just withdraw to a different place. And these fishermen, they just drop everything to follow Jesus. There's no sales pitch. Jesus doesn't get up with, charts, no PowerPoint, no checklist of here is all the things you will gain if you sign up today to be my disciple in the coming kingdom of heaven. Join now and save 25% on your sign-up fees. No. He just says, follow me. And they go. Perhaps it says something about their situation that they are so quickly to say, heck yeah, something better than this? There's not much worse. It's got to be worth a chance. It could be that they are just at the right moment in their lives to be able to hear Jesus' call in a way that others couldn't. I don't think Jesus really, was walking around with a halo, so I don't think he was all that obvious as to who he was. But perhaps there was something charismatic, engaging about him that made him seem trustworthy. But off they went. Now, their lives certainly after that were not easy. But yet, I would guess that they probably did not regret their decision that day to be part of something else, to be fishing for people, although that term nowadays sounds a little off-putting. But to gathering community together, to be bringing people to this message, to sharing the hope of some other reign, rule that was not Rome and its oppression. As I mentioned to the children in our time together this morning, God is always calling us. And we tend to sort of focus mostly on the big calls, right? Calls to ministry, calls to a profession. But God calls us in many, many little ways too. God calls us to rest sometimes. Maybe the call to drop everything is really drop everything and go take a nap. And do that more often. Maybe the call is to reach out more. Maybe it is a call to a profession or a new way of living. Though I know for some of you, those days have passed, and you're like, no, I've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. I'm happy to see that in my rearview mirror. But still, as I'm sure you all agree, life doesn't end upon retirement, and there is much still to be engaged with in the world. And God is still calling you. I realized last week as we were singing our last song and looking at my benediction, which we will sing that song again in a few minutes, how many questions there were in our service last week. And I thought it was so appropriate because Jesus did a lot of ministry with stories and engaging people, but he also asked a lot of questions. And those first words that he said last week in the gospel in John were a question. And I think so often we don't expect that or hope for that when we come to worship. We come with our questions. We don't want more questions. We want answers to the questions we're bringing. But Jesus, God, Spirit, they don't really work that way. They work in so many unexpected, unpredictable ways, and often it is by asking us questions. And they're not pop quiz questions, they're not Bible trivia, but more questions for thought and reflection and prayer and conversation with God. Something to mull over together. So here are some questions, some more questions, before we sing some more questions in a minute, to mull over and let percolate. Are there nets in our lives that God is calling us to drop today? Are there ways of life we are ready to immediately leave behind? Just going to let that simmer for a moment before we go to the next one. Are there nets that God is calling us to drop today? Ways of life we are ready to immediately leave behind? Perhaps this is not something new, but something that's been tugging at you for a while now. Has the decisive moment for you to let go arrived? Do we hear an invitation from Jesus to strike out in a new direction towards justice, kindness, and God's jubilee, which is a releasing and forgiving? Have we been resisting this kind of call or dragging our feet? And if so, no, you are not alone. Throughout the ages, the history of our ancestors of faith, there is often a lot of dragging of feet and denial. Not so many like the fishermen who just dropped everything in the moment and immediately followed Jesus, but a lot more of like, are you sure, God? Is it really me? Some of our most famous and wonderful folks in the Bible, like Moses, were like, I don't think I'm the right one for this job. God knows what God is doing, although welcomes questioning and challenge also. The commentary, they're actually a video company who also does theological commentary. The SALT Project had this to say about this text today. God's call manifests in 1,000 different ways, and we respond in 1,000 more, from courage to reluctance to hopping on the next ship out of town. But there's at least one golden thread running through it all. God's calling is frequently surprising and unpredictable, spilling over the edges of conventional wisdom in ways that are more than just a little bit wild. Who is called? Not the supposedly elite, but those among the supposedly lowest on the social ladder. In this case, Simon, Andrew, James, and John. And to what end? For the sake of justice, kindness, and humility in our lives and our communities. For the sake of a world one day turned upside down in a magnificent jubilee on earth as it is in heaven. And indeed, for the sake of the following itself, the companionship itself, the love and togetherness, of walking humbly with God along the way. Follow me. I love those last little phrases. For the sake of the following itself, the companionship itself, the love and togetherness of journeying humbly with God. Sounds to me a little bit like what church is supposed to be. Not the place we come for clear answers to our questions, but a place where we can come together to listen for God's call, to be companions to each other as we answer those calls, however wild and unpredictable they may turn out to be, to love each other, and to stay together through these long and winding journeys. Amen.